Hi guys, this is the last of your review. Remember, I'm going to give you a sheet of paper on Monday during class that you can write anything down from your final exam review, and make sure that final exam review is done because you can show it, you hand it in the day of our final exam, and make sure it's completed, and that would allow you to receive some additional points on the final exam itself. I'm going to just have a handful of questions on here. Anything that is on the review packet you can have. Obviously, you want to make sure you have slope equation on there. We've used that quite a bit. You want to make sure you have y equals mx plus b, which is called slope-intercept form. You want to make sure you have point slope on there. Okay, a couple of things that you really want to kind of focus on. You might come across a couple questions that might be like y equals 3x plus 7 and 2x minus 3y equals 10. And they might give you some points like 4 comma 5, 2 comma 3, and maybe 1 comma 2. What you want to do is you want to see which set of these points works. So just call these all x1 and y, or x and y, and plug in to both the equations, both x and y. Whichever point works on both means you would have a true statement. So you get 5 equals 3 times 4 plus 7. So 5 equals 12 plus 7. So you don't even have to try it in the second equation. This one's a no. And I don't know if any of these will work. I just made them up arbitrarily. Second problem, we probably plug 3 in for x, and then I have 3 times 2 minus 7, or plus 7, excuse me. So that's 3 equals 6 plus 7, so that's 13 equals 3. That's no. And then the last one, 1 and 2. So we're going to get 2 equals 3 times 1 plus 7. So 2 equals 3 plus 7, so t equals 10. So I didn't even have to plug these. I didn't have to even plug the second equation in. When this works, if I plug my point in and it works on both, so you'd wind up getting like 7 equals 7 and 10 equals 10, something like that. If you got something like this, by plugging that point in, that would be the answer. And again, I don't have the answer up here, but it's just, this is an example of how to do that problem. Remember, when you are, if you got something, oh, let's do an absolute problem. So if we had like x plus 7 minus 4 is equal to 10. So remember with this problem, we're going to add 4 to both sides. So get rid of that. You keep the absolute value by itself. And then you can break the absolute value into two parts. So x plus 7 equals 14, and x plus 7 equals negative 14. So you have two answers to this problem. And you just go ahead and try and solve it. So this is your first answer. Those cancel, so x equals negative 21. So you have two answers for that type of problem. That might be something to write down. Remember, as far as slopes go, if you get m, if you go and you solve it, if you get m equals 0, or you get m equals undefined, this is when you get 0 on top and then you have a number on bottom, which would just be y equals whatever the repeat of the y value is. If you got it undefined, which means you would have a number on top and it's divided by 0, so 0 is underneath. This is just going to shortcut to x equals some number. And that should say number there, not 2. Okay, so what you would look at for an example of this top problem, this would be like if you had 3 comma 2 and -7 comma 2. This just gives you an answer of y equals 2. The example of this type of situation is if you had 5 comma 7 and 5 comma 4, this just becomes x equals 4. So those shortcut pretty nicely. That might save you some time on the problem. As far as slopes go, so m, let's say m is equal to 2/3. If we wanted the parallel slope to that, so remember I'm going to use those two lines. The parallel slope is the exact same. If you wanted to find the perpendicular slope, it's going to be the opposite sign. Remember I used the upside down t. It's going to be the opposite sign, so it's negative. This was positive, so it's not negative. And then you flip over the fraction. And that's the perpendicular slope. Remember when you have a problem like this, when you do this type of problem, first off you say, okay, it crosses at 2, it's up here. Has a slope of 3, so up 3, right 1. Remember, because I don't have an equal sign, this is going to be dotted. And then you try your 0, 0. And when you plug 0, 0 in for x and y, excuse me. So this is going to give you 0 is less than 2. This is true. So being it's true, that means you shade the side that 0, 0 is on. If that gave me a false, you shade the other side of the line. Okay, remember on this one, you want to make sure you know that it's solid or dotted. If you had this or this, the line's going to be solid. If you had this or this, it's going to be dotted. So you might want to write that information down. Remember when you have a basic inequality, so if you had something like x plus 6 is greater than 7, when you solve it, you'd subtract 6 from both sides, so you get this. Remember on a number line, if you had 0 here and you had 1 here, this would be an open dot, and that's shading this way. Okay, if the letter is first, then the arrow points the direction you shade. If you had this type of sign, you would have a solid dot, or that could be this kind of sign as well. Those both give you a solid dot, and you shade the direction it goes. So this and this gives you an open dot. You might have 2 equations or 2 lines that they give you. And so let's say you graphed one line, you had the equation, and then you graphed another line, you had the equation. If there's 2 lines going, figure out what this intersection is. So maybe I'm just going to make this up. So maybe that's -3 and then up 2. So 3 comma 2 would be your direction. If you had an equation say something like this, if you solved it for y, you'd subtract 5x from both sides. And this is now going to be our slope, so our slope is equal to -5. This is our y-intercept, which is our b value, which you could write as just 7. Sometimes it might be addressed as 0, 7, so something like that. If you had a line of best fit, and let's say they had an equation kind of, or they had this data, and they had a line of best fit, and it stops there, and they want to know what the y-intercept would be. Kind of maybe extend this line and say, oh, look, it crosses at -1, so that would mean your b value is -1. So then you could, when you plug it into y equals mx plus b, you could say, well, so far I would know I have -1. And then you might have to find the slope. So remember with the slope, you're just looking for is it positive or negative, and see if you can count up from there. But realize that you might have to extend your line to figure out the y-intercept. That would be something good for you to look at. And then the last thing I want to go over is maybe you had an equation like this. And they wanted, this is point slope, so they want you to convert it to y equals mx plus b. Okay, so you're going to distribute over the parentheses. Subtract 5. So y equals 2x minus 17. So you might have to evaluate or rearrange the equation. There's all kinds of different types of this. You might have the equation give it to you like this. And we want to get this to look like y equals mx plus b. So on this one, we would subtract 3x from both sides. Those cancel. It's a positive 6. Divide everything by 2. So you wind up, the 2's cancel. The negative 3 over 2 doesn't cancel. And that cancels down to 3 because 2 goes into both of those. Okay, so please remember there are 2 other videos and there is this final exam packet. Get the final exam packet done. Every problem on there is worked out so you can, justify your work, make sure you get it correct. Turn in the packet the day we have our final. If you turn it in the day we have our final, you can get the extra points on the final exam. So it's kind of like giving you credit for doing the review packet. The white sheet of paper that I gave you today, write down anything on it you want. Okay, if you wrote too big, let me know. I'll give you another sheet of paper so you can write smaller. So you can put as much on that on sheet of paper on the front and on the back for the final exam. On the day of the final, make sure you're here. Bring something to write with. If you have a calculator, bring a calculator. I hope you had a nice semester with me. Take care of one another.